Of course, we start here at home, where Vice President Kashim Shettima has pledged swift implementation of policies to revitalize the manufacturing sector, stressing the importance of local content and adherence to Executive Order 003. Speaking at the National Manufacturing Policy Summit, Shettima emphasized reducing import dependency to foster industrial growth. Industry leaders, including Aliko Dangote and former Finance Minister Olusegun Aganga, highlighted the need for reliable power, affordable financing, and protection for local industries to achieve sustainable economic growth.
Import dependence is equivalent to importing poverty, exporting jobs. Anything that you import, you are importing poverty into your nation and you are exporting jobs out. No power, no growth, no prosperity. So unless you have a power, you will not have growth, you will not have prosperity. Today we're battling with a very high interest rates. This interest rate is now saying that we should fight inflation. Interest rate is 30%, there won't be any job creation because we're actually stifling growth. So interest rate can remain 30, but then no growth will happen unless that interest rate goes down.
We have more than 85 million hectares of land, of arable land, more than 45 solid minerals in commercial quantity, and we're a top 10 or 15 oil gas producer in the world. But Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, make no mistakes. These do not make us rich as a nation. These resources do not make us rich. What makes a country rich are what you do with these resources. It's about moving from peasant farming to commercial agriculture, from artisanal mining to attracting minor and major miners in the mining sector. It is about how you convert sugar cane to sugar and a source of energy, cotton to textile and garments, how you produce aluminium from bauxite, steel from iron ore. It is how we convert crude oil and gas to refined petroleum products, fertilizers, petrochemicals, and feedstock for plastic and the chemicals industry.
It is concerning that the nation's manufacturing sector is ailing and our members are bowing out of business amidst heightened macroeconomic and infrastructural challenges, making the operating environment costly and inconducive. This reality makes the timing of this summit just. The time this administration is reflecting on its past 1 year in the office, at the most opportune moment to take stock and redouble efforts to achieve President Tinubu's agenda to promote domestic production.
I feel the pain of the hard times our manufacturers are facing, particularly regarding the rising operational costs due to the inevitable fallout of the ongoing reforms. The reforms are aimed at making our economy stronger and better, and most importantly, in the interest of our future generations. Through collective efforts by the government and the private sector, we will transcend bonds and limits that have caused and have a cause to smile later. Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we must at all costs shift our economy from being import dependent. Both the private and public sectors have relied too much on imported goods we can actually produce at home, undermining our own industrial potential. At this summit, we must rethink our long-standing reliance on importation of foreign products and proper practical measures that will activate the capacity to produce locally in the required quantities to meet our domestic demands. This is the way to foster our industrial development and competitiveness.
Well, several profound points made there on how to move Nigeria and the Nigerian economy forward. Rufai, your take on this?
Shocking thing is we've been making all those points, but we don't do anything about them. I'll take you through history. Over all the other countries in the world, they always invest in their SMEs. General Park in the 60s, when he started getting a lot of subventions in South Korea, he invested them in a group of small companies called Shables, which are the Samsungs today. The Shables became the big companies today. In the early 1920s in Japan had companies that accelerated their growth and development. They started as small companies, but they became what we call the Zaibatsus. In Germany, you have the Mittelstand. Every country in the world, you've got some level of small businesses. But here, what do? We kill the small businesses. So what should we do? Because it's this small business that in turn build capacity to be able to become a multinational. At some point, Dangote was a small business, but he grew over the years to become a big multinational. So what are the things to do? I don't think this is the right time to start saying we want to start thinking of a roadmap. We ought to have done that many years ago. Think of a roadmap. Even this administration, before they came in, they ought to have done that many years ago. So we're in dire strait. What do? Number one, we have to incentivize small businesses. Where are those loans the government said at 9% interest rate for small businesses to be able to show up production? Two, they have to quickly pass the minimum wage. Because why? You need disposable income in the hands of these workers. There's something we call trickle down. When that disposable income comes, at least you can spend more on the items that are being manufactured by this company. So quickly, you also need a lot of that. Also, you need to incentivize the businesses. Dangote was talking about interest rate. Yeah, that's a very strong point. But apart from interest rate, also you need to help them. How do you help them? You need to patronize locally made products. So I asked Vice President Shettima, is he driving an Innoson or a Nord car? Because they are talking about made in Nigerian products, and there's no Nigerian made car in the presidential fleets. And the president doesn't drive a Nigerian made car. And you're talking about Nigerian made products. So the optics is entirely wrong. Fourthly, you need to also be able to incentivize the big companies that came in here when Nigeria had an automotive sector. A lot of us failed to realize that the reason why you had Dunlop and Michelin here in the 60s and 70s was because Nigeria actually had an automotive sector that was up and running then. So you need to be able to incentivize those people to be able to come back. And when those automotive sector went down, you know, Amanco in Anambra, Kaduna, Pan, and all of them, when they started to go down, then the likes of the Dunlop and Michelin started to pack up. So you need to incentivize them to be able to come back, to be able to show up the economy. Then you need to fix power. Then you also need to remove your mind on this fixation of that you've got natural resources. You've got natural resources, the potential. If you don't activate it, if you don't activate the 207 trillion metric tons of gas you have, or the 37 billion, barrel storage reserve of oil you have, if you don't activate it, nothing happens. So you need to get out there, roll up the sleeve and do the hard work. But we're not doing any of that. We just talk. We like to talk. We talk too much. Olarotimi calls it holding talks.
Okay. Last year, the Manufacturing Association of Nigeria said it had been looking for an opportunity to sit down at the table at a forum with the federal government of Nigeria to look at the issues in the sector. What are the issues in the sector? Capacity utilization in the manufacturing sector is down to below 50%. It's even worse if you have the right statistics. Secondly, there are issues with the inflation rate, which now is about 3.95%. There are issues with interest rates. Aliko Dangote was just saying yesterday that yes, 26.5 in the books, but in reality it's as high as 30%. There's security challenges. There's power problem. There are infrastructure issues. Last year, Otumba Francis Meshiri, as the president of Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, kept asking the federal government of Nigeria to provide an opportunity, a forum, such as the one that is happening in Abuja now, for them to look at the issues. So to that extent, the fact that they now have a summit with manufacturers sitting down together, all of these issues will have been on the table. Now, did that summit, did they provide any solutions? The vice president was saying, we will now come up with a roadmap, we will come up with a framework. No, the problem with Nigeria is not the absence of ideas. And it is very instructive that they invited Mr. Olusegun Aganga to that forum. Under Aganga, as Minister of Investment, Trade and Industry, they call it MITI. It's called MITI. The Minister MITI that Aganga was, in his time, produced an industrial policy, revised for this country, revised a trade policy. So the ideas are there. And if you think, okay, this is about, past government, past administration, there's something called a National Economic Summit Group. All the ideas on the surface of the world, they are there in documents that have been made available by the National Economic Summit Group. Some of us got so frustrated that we began to ask that what indeed is the value of this Economic Summit Group? They just go there, they talk about pillars of growth, pillars of development, but nothing happens in the manufacturing sector, nothing happens with regard to investment, nothing happens with regard to the provision of an enabling environment. Now, at that same forum yesterday, Alhaji Aliko Dangote spoke. He said, look, interest rate at 30% is not good for business because there will be no growth, there will be no investment. Well, the implication of that is that people will not have jobs. Factories will not function. There will be no productivity. And as you know, as a man who is a major investor in this economy, each time the president travels abroad, he promises investors that he will provide an enabling environment under his watch for investments to thrive. Now, how will investments thrive? How will foreign investors come here if, as Alhaji Aliko Dangote was pointing out, even the people who are doing business here, they are groaning? So in terms of the signals, the international community will be watching this summit, between the government and the manufacturers, and just see that even Nigerians themselves, in terms of what they have issues. We have issues with inputs. We have issues with volume, in addition to all the other issues. When we were studying economics in secondary school, they were talking about factors for the location of industry. All those factors for the location of industry in Nigeria have gone all right. Either access to capital or access to land or transportation or nearness to raw material, all of those, they are not there. And so we have an emergency. It's not about coming up with a policy framework, coming up with a roadmap. Those frameworks, those roadmaps exist. One is for government to summon the political will to address all the interconnected issues that I say are so obvious, even the blind can see them.
Absolutely. In his speech yesterday, the former minister, Olusegun Aganga, referred to the statistics that say that Africa as an entire continent only accounts for 2% of global manufacturing. And the irony is not lost on me that we're talking about value addition, making sure that our raw materials don't leave without some sort of development, manufacturing, value addition, and so forth. And you have Aliko Dangote sitting there, who we can say probably is the biggest advocate of value addition, with the construction of his own refinery. So you have somebody in the room. You don't have to look too far to sit down with this individual who's made public all that he has gone through, the challenges and the struggles as a Nigerian that he has gone through to realize the dream of his refinery, which is still going through so many challenges. So that's just one case study sitting there in front of you, who is making himself available, not just for the sake of his businesses, for the good of other businesses in this country, and saying, this is what I go through. So it's a little bit ironic to sit and listen to the case studies and to people's experiences, big, medium, and small enterprises, and then respond by saying, okay, well, we've heard you, we're going to come up with a plan. That's not the correct signaling. What we need to hear is policies being rolled out. We need to see implementation. Rufai made reference to the South Asian tigers, the South Koreas, Singapore's, Malaysia's, some of the wealthiest economies in the world. Now, what did they do? They took some time out to close their borders and focus on themselves and develop their industry And that's where you saw the emergence of companies like Samsung. You look at Europe, East Europe. East Europe said, let us invest in our automotive manufacturing. That's where you saw the birth of cars like the Yugo, the Škoda in Poland. In South Africa, you have very, very restrictive policies that say that in order for you to even import a second-hand vehicle, you need to have proved that you've owned that vehicle for over 1 year. It's only one vehicle per family, and you have to go and apply for an import permit. Now, what does this do? This is to protect the automotive industry within the country. So what are we doing to say, yes, we want to do business with the world. This is a global economy. But what are we doing to say, however, Nigerian businesses must thrive first before we engage in business with the world? Or those businesses that want to do business in Nigeria, this is what we're doing to make sure that you can thrive. Because when businesses thrive, the economy thrives, and then, of course, Nigerians thrive.